welcome to StudioJake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. We're going to be talking about the trailer for Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. Before we get into that, be sure to like this video, share it out to everyone, leave me a comment, tell me what you think, and of course, subscribe. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscriptions, so every time you click that subscribe button, it really helps me out. Alright, so after being put through every time Zack Snyder sneezes, release the Snyder Cut, even after it was released, trends, and now we have a new film he's developed after Army of the Dead and Army of Thieves, which he didn't direct Army of Thieves, he just produced it after those two failed to wow audiences. Now he's finally going to get his rejected Star Wars script made in the form of Rebel Moon. And I just think that this thing is really hilarious. He went to Disney with a proposal for a Star Wars script. At a time when they were desperate for directors because they had just lost the original director to Solo, as well as things weren't going well with Colin Trevorrow, so they were desperate for it, and Zack Snyder comes to them, but them remembering all the drama that he caused at Warner Brothers, they laughed him out of the room, and somehow he rooked Netflix into him joining their streaming service, and voila, he gets his rejected Star Wars script, which takes its title from a Vox Day novella that's based on a video game and also steals plot elements from it. Not to mention, he's going to take inspiration from such films as Seven Samurai and all of that. Anyway, Zack Snyder is a hack, but I thought, before I did a full on video about Rebel Moon, I should at least wait for the trailer, even though images were coming out and a few teasers here and there were coming out. I wanted to wait for the trailer. Well, the trailer finally came out, and so I gave it a watch, and it was cringe-inducing. For one thing, he didn't even bother to take the lightsabers out of the story because, again, he wanted to riff off George Lucas, and so he made a Star Wars screenplay, and he couldn't even be bothered to take that out. So it's got lightsabers, and there's this vague narration from the great actor Anthony Hopkins, and it goes on and it just kind of tells this legend about this little girl, and I guess it's trying to imply that the main character, who's going to be played by Sofia Boutella, is this chosen one, and then it kind of shows other actors like Jamon Hoso. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Please let me know. He was the wizard in Shazam, as well as Charlie Hunnam, who was in Sons of Anarchy, and was also in The Gentleman from Guy Ritchie. I always feel bad because when these actors get rooked into doing a Snyder film, because here's what happens with a Snyder film. His only good film is 300. Okay, you can throw in his animated film he did with the owls, but if you want to say it's decent. All of his movies, they always have hype because the trailers are always very visually stunning, or he's leached onto a property like he did with the DC universe, right? He was the fifth director that they wanted to do Man of Steel. They originally wanted Nolan. Nolan passed it off to Matthew Vaughn. Matthew Vaughn didn't want to do it, and even before Nolan, they wanted a director named McG to do it. Those fell apart in negotiations and other issues, but then they eventually moved down the ladder all the way down to Zack Snyder, and he was packing up a printer box because Sucker Punch had just been an abysmal failure, and so but because he was I guess the only director left on the lot, they decided to give him a chance. And like I said, it came out with a lot of hype. Man of Steel did good at the box office, as did Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, but then it didn't really land with audiences because it's not the DC universe. It's Zack Snyder's plagiarism of it, which in Rebel Moon, from what I can tell from the trailer, is going to be a plagiarism of Star Wars. Not inspired by, because I know there's a difference between inspired by, like George Lucas, he was inspired by Valerian. He was inspired by Japanese cinema to make Star Wars. That's why there's a lot. The Jedi so closely resemble the samurai. but he didn't plagiarize it. He took elements from it that inspired him and developed the story. What Zack Snyder does is he stands on the backs of other people's genius and then tries to replicate it and then say, "Look how awesome I am." And that's what he did with the DC universe. That's what he did with the with Night of the Living Dead and a whole assortment of his movies. And even 300, that's his one film that I like. It was really Frank Miller that carried that movie um, through to the finish line. That had nothing to do with Zack Snyder. And I really feel that with Rebel Moon, it's going to be similar. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe Rebel Moon will be just as amazing as 300 was, but I got to admit, I'm kind of doubting it. Now he also, and this is why he also came up with the story and he wrote the screen. He co-wrote the screenplay. Now there are two big names attached to this. There's Kurt Johnstad, and he's got a decent resume. He actually co-wrote 300. He did another movie called Act of Valor, but then he did 300: Rise of an Empire, which no one cared about, as well as Atomic Blonde, which barely made a splash. But then he has Shay Hatton, who co-wrote some of the John Wick films, and it's like, guys, what are you doing? Why are you hanging out with Zack Snyder? You guys got careers. But I just don't see this film going anywhere because we were all fooled again by Army of the Dead. It had a great cast, and then the story was awful. The special effects were terrible, and one of the actors that was in it got Me Too'd, and so they had to digitally insert another actress, or they got an actress to replace the actor. Because we've got to stand in solidarity with every movement that every celebrity ever invents. And those scenes spliced together. Now, I did think that actress did a good job with the role, but I still thought that how it was split in and everything, it was so blurry. The tones were way off. It was supposed to be a movie set in Vegas. You could barely tell. It had very inconsistent way that the zombies would interact with, The Walking Dead and World War Z. The zombies were very consistent in how they attacked people, what their skill set was, but not with Army of the Dead. It was very sporadic, very, very random, if you will. Like there were some zombies that looked like they were robotic. They had the weird alpha zombies that were very inconsistent. Were they intelligent? Were they not? And then, of course, the whole movie was destroyed because Dave Bautista's character has a daughter. Basically, everything that went wrong in that movie was because of the daughter. She was a spoiled brat, and she should have, listened to her dad who said you shouldn't come. And, of course, and then they did the whole thing where they sacrifice this poor guy who, I guess he was not a bad guy, but he had not been to trial. He had never been accused of a crime, like not really. And they sacrifice him to the zombies. He ends up becoming one of the alpha zombies, I think. It's very, very inconsistent tone. And one of the things that Zack Snyder does really poorly is character development. His characters don't really grow throughout their films. He just kind of throws them at you. And also, whenever he adapts a character, it's clear he doesn't know the motivation. This was clear in how he developed Superman and Batman. He didn't know the origins of either of them. He just kind of threw them in there, and we were just supposed to believe that Batman didn't, that Batman is going to cry with Superman about their mommies. I mean, oh my gosh, just absolutely appalling. And honestly, Rebel Moon looks the same. It's going to be very pretty visually. It's going to have a good cast. And then there's going to be cheesy dialogue. There's going to be poor character development. There's going to be a lot of editing mishaps. You're not going to understand what is going on. You're going to get lost in all the minutia. There's going to be these very vague conversations that are supposed to have deep philosophical meanings, but really they're just shallow and written by someone who is a freshman in college and he's taken a philosophy course, because that's what Zack Snyder movies are. He just doesn't have the skill set to be a big movie director, and they need to stop giving him these big budgets. He needs to cut his teeth on smaller films and then get up to this, but they made him too big too fast, and his movies over time, even the ones that did well, people are like, that movie actually wasn't that good. Like, whenever people reflect, I've had this conversation about Watchmen. People who saw it when it first came out, they were blown away by it. And then now they're like, why was Unforgettable playing while the comedian was getting killed? Like, what was the point of that? It was so dumb. It was just a gimmick to get people in seats. It had nothing to do with the story. It didn't match what's going on, and it made no freaking sense. And that's the going to be the same with Rebel Moon. I imagine there's going to be people who are going to watch it and they're going to like it, but then it's not going to do very well. It's Netflix, so it might stream well because people are bored, especially with the actors and writers, still pretending they need more millions and, on the strike and everything. So it might get some play, but then people are going to start like not liking it. It's going to get some bad reviews. Probably one of them will be from me. I don't know for sure. Like I said, it could change my mind, but um, whenever it gets down to it, and then he's going to blame Netflix and say, well, they didn't let me make the movie that I wanted to make. So then hashtag release the Snyder cut is going to go all over again. And he's going to say, oh, my cut is completed. Oh, I need 60 million more dollars to do it. It's just going to be one thing after the other. And like I said, maybe Rebel Moon will change my mind. I'm not thinking so after watching the trailer. However, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt when I sit down and watch it when part 1 comes out in December. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up, that you'll leave me a comment and tell me what you think, that you'll share it out with your friends, and of course, consider subscribing to Studio Jake. I cover all kinds of nerd and pop culture topics, including film, television, anime, comic books, and so much more. I hope that you'll also head over to my main website, StudioJakeMedia.com, where I have even more news, views, and commentary. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, head over to my locals page. That's studiojakemedia.locals.com. It's the best way to support me. I'm trying to build a little community there. I have exclusive reviews and articles, so definitely head over there and check it out. And I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.